there's something I've heard a lot of people say about money. That it's like a phrase or whatever. It's like money's not everything. Not having it is, right? And first of all, very true. But I would definitely say the same thing about friends, where, you know, your friends aren't everything in your life, but when you don't have any, they, you know, then that fact kind of becomes everything in your life. And I'm someone who is very fortunate to have a good circle of friends around me. Like, I wouldn't refer to myself as someone with a million friends, you know, I'm not one of those people, but I'm by no means a lonely guy, you know, I'm very fortunate in that regard. But I have, whether fortunately or unfortunately, I would say fortunately, I think this is a good thing. I'm happy that this happened in my life. I've gone through multiple periods now where, you know, I'm very lonely. I have a ton of friends. I have no friends. And, you know, this is something that's naturally going to come as just like you age. I remember for some reason, not for some reason actually, it's very obvious why. The year or so after I graduated high school, I watched a ton of those videos on YouTube where it's like on loneliness. I'm probably going to name today's video something along those lines, because it's a topic I've wanted to talk about. Those videos, and remembering how much that they helped me, you know, they definitely motivated a lot of what I want to do with starting Paint&Talk, because like, loneliness is such a tough thing, but it's so simple at the same time, and that's why I think it's almost even harder. I think that fact makes it all so much worse, you know? Because when I tell you, like, oh, you're just not gonna have people around, it seems easy, right? It's like, oh, I'll just do my own thing. But you don't realize how much you don't realize how much, like, you want to have people around until you don't, you know? Like, for me, I never really think anymore. I mean, you know, every now and again, but not too often. I don't really find myself thinking like, man, I wish I could go do something right now. You know, I wish I had people here right now that I could go hang out with. And that surely comes by the fact that, like, I could, you know what I mean? Like, if I were like, oh, I want to go see some people right now, I feel like getting out of the house, you know, I feel like going around the town, I could do that, you know, and I feel like that makes it so much different than when you fully can't. And the funny part is, and this is a fact that, like, I've definitely learned as time's gone on, I desire, you know, like, the amount that I see people now that I have a lot of friends versus when I've gone through those periods when I didn't have a ton of friends is the exact same. The only thing that really changes is the desire. You know, I was far more, when you're always sitting around thinking about like, man, I have no one to see right now, I'm so lonely, it makes it all seem so much worse than the fact that, like, you know, you're gonna see people about the same amount no matter what, because you got your life going on, you're busy, you know what I mean? But those, like, 2-3 times a week when you should be seeing people, you know, especially for me, it was always Friday nights, because it was like, oh, everyone's out on a Friday night, I should be too. And those times are more than enough to just, like, destroy you for a little while, because you feel like a loser, you know? It so much comes with it. Especially, and I don't think this is a unique experience at all, but right after you get out of high school, you, like, lose 80% of your friends. When I was in school, I had a lot of friends that were older than me. Most of my friends actually were older than me. They were 2 years up. So, like, I had already kind of gone through seeing a lot of my friends go away and leave and, you know, go live their own lives. So, like, it was almost, and I remember thinking, like, oh, as I get into, you know, my senior year, as I'm graduating high school, it's gonna make it all so much easier. But it didn't at all, because it was like, oh, I went from going, half my friends are leaving, but I still have the other half, to like, oh, this is what I got left now. Like, this is really what I got left. And, you know, since then, funny enough, actually, I would say that I probably haven't gone and, like, amassed huge new swaths of friends like you might expect. You know, that's definitely what I expected when I was in it, where I was like, oh, you know, I'm a little lonely right now because, you know, we graduated and I'm not seeing people every day like I was. But, you know, in a year or so, I'll have a whole new friend group and my life will be fine and dandy once again. And then that just never happened. What happened was I learned how to reach out to people and how to, like, not make do with what I have, but I don't like the term make do because it makes it seem like I'm changing something that I do, when in reality, it was more of a mindset change, you know, of just being like, no, like, I'm fine. You know what I mean? I have X number of friends who I really love and are really solid friends. And, like, that's awesome. And, you know, like, I should just be, you know, I shouldn't sit here and be like, I need more and more and more friends. One thing that I've fortunately never had to go through, but I mean, it'd be awful if I did, is like going through having just 0 people around at all. And, I mean, if you're watching this from that circumstance, I feel awful. You know what I mean? I don't have even any advice to give, just 'cause I've never gone through that kind of thing. I've always had at least a couple people around. But I will say that I've always been happier having less friends that I genuinely like than when I've had more friends around. And that was another big realization, because when you're in school, when you're, you know, in that era of your life, you have a lot of people around you, and you feel like you have a ton of friends, but you kind of don't, because, like, think about how many of those people you'd hang out with if you didn't see them every day. The answer is probably like 0. So that's why I always say, like, focus on just getting 3-4 friends that you really love spending time with. And that's so much, like, way more than enough, you know? Yeah, you'll be lonely sometimes. Yeah, your 3 friends will be busy sometimes. But, like, if you genuinely enjoy hanging out with them, you're good. You know, like, you're fine. If friends were $1, you want... Oh my god, I'm completely butchering this quote. If friends were $1, you want to have 4 quarters over 100 pennies, you know? That's so true. And that's, like, a big thing that I recommend. Is just, like, making sure that you got a couple people there that are solid, and that you can just, like, 100% rely on and depend on, and those are your guys, those are your friends. Because what, in my experience, is so much worse than having no one to hang out with is having people to hang out with, and every time you're with them, you're forced to look around and go, I don't like any of these people, you know? Or you know, it's even worse when you got people you're hanging out with, and you feel great because you got people you're hanging out with, but the second you're a little too much of yourself, they look at you funny, or they're like, you're being weird right now, or they don't accept that. You know, I've gone through those multiple times, friend groups like that, where they don't accept me, or I just don't like them too much, and every time it's been worse than being alone in my room on a Friday night, being like, man, I should totally be out with people right now. You know, I would take being alone a million times over before being lonely, because I think it's just a better place to be at. I think when you're, you know, there's so much power in being alone, because it's like, I can get people, you know, like I could, like, eventually there will be people that come, and this loneliness will not last forever. When you're alone, though, it's just like, how do I even, you know, it's harder to branch out and find, almost like now how it's harder for people to start like side gigs when they already are making like $100,000 a year, but they hate their job. And it's way harder for them to find side gigs when they're just like broke and have nowhere else to go. I genuinely think it's kind of the same thing with friends, because it's so much easier to be like, I am alone, I have no one to go to, I'll go to people, like I'll find people, than it is to be like, I have people here that are well-established friends and I just don't like those people. Or, you know, a lot of the times I've experienced, like, I don't like who they've become. You know, like, you were my friend a couple of years ago, you're not now though, and I don't know if I've changed or you changed, but something has, and this isn't working anymore. Like, that's way harder. I think, like, friendships are weird because it's a kind of relationship where you're supposed to, you know, you know that your friendship's gonna end at some point, whether they move away, whether someone gets a job, whether, you know, if you're younger, you're gonna go off to college. If you're in college, you're gonna graduate college. If you're at a job, you're gonna move and get a new job. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, most friendships will end. It's very rare that people have lifelong friends. I know very few people in my life who are like, oh, I've had this friend since high school, you know? And it's awesome if they do. Like it sounds like the coolest thing ever. But it's rare. It's really rare. And you know, I think that friendships are weird in that regard because you know they're gonna end. You know, like something's gonna happen eventually, but you can't really say that, right? Like, how many times have you turned to a friend and been like, okay, when we're not friends, you know, like, or in the future, when this is not happening anymore, that doesn't really happen because you're supposed to act like you guys are gonna be friends forever, even though you both know you're not. Like, that makes no sense. Of course you're not gonna be friends forever. There's things are gonna happen, and you know, maybe if you're fortunate enough to have people in your life where you're like, no, I genuinely think I'll be around them forever, hold those people close, 100%. That's amazing, and I don't mean to cast doubt on anything like that. I think if you try, you will for a lot of this stuff, but for a lot of the other people who you don't necessarily, you know, call your closest friends, or maybe you don't care about quite as much, being blunt about it, you won't be around them in the future, but you'll never say that. You know what I mean? You'll never, it's like one of those weird things where you're not supposed to acknowledge the fact that this has an endpoint, even though it totally does. And I think that's what makes it, I don't know if you guys ever went through this, but like when you're in school, or, you know, especially like elementary school, this was a big thing, you know, as you get older, not as much, but I mean, it still happened to me a little bit here and there, I guess. When you like stop hanging out with a friend and you gotta say it to your parents, it's so much more awkward than telling them you broke up with somebody, because when you're breaking up with somebody, it's like, oh yeah, this was gonna happen eventually. Like dating is like, oh yeah, they're gonna be gone soon enough. How long is this gonna last? You know, a year at max, especially if you're younger, 2-3 years, but no matter what, it's like, oh, this is gonna end soon. But friendships are like, wait, why did it end? Like, it's assumed. A relationship, you can be like, this ended because it just wasn't right? That makes total sense. If you go, a friendship ended because it just wasn't right, people will be like, why? Like, are your standards too high? And I think the answer should be like, fucking yeah. Your standards should be really high for who you spend your time with, because like, you know, that's, you're in a relationship where you are like, this isn't going to end. This doesn't have a natural defined endpoint. So why would you choose to be in a relationship like that with somebody who you don't want to invest your time with? You know what I mean? And I hate the transactionality in a lot of relationships nowadays, but I don't even think it's a degree of transactionality as much as it's just like, you gotta make sure that you really enjoy those people, because you just don't have that much time, you know? You really don't. And that's why, moral of the story, if you're lonely, be good right now. That's solid. Work on it, but like, good, you're fine. And if you have friends, push most of them away. Like, that's the whole thing here. Anyways, guys, this has been an episode of Paint and Talk. This painting is finished. Just a little discussion on loneliness. I feel like it was half split up between loneliness and friendships. I originally set out to just discuss friendships today, but it kind of veered off, which is fine. I mean, that's the whole point of the show. But anyways, this is the painting. I think it looks pretty cool. It's almost actually exactly what I was going for once. So I just think that this yellow ochre, is ochre the name of the color? This ochre looks way too much like peanut butter and jelly once it's on canvas. I've noticed that a ton. Like, it just really looks like peanut butter. But outside of that, I mean, you know, it's great. So check out the Instagram to see this painting. You guys know the drill. And until tomorrow, guys, gals, and pals, this has been Paint and Talk episode 40. Oh wait, we got a happy episode 40. I forgot we had to do that. This has been episode 40. I'm here. It definitely didn't pick up on camera, but as I like laughed a little bit there, I just spit straight into the camera, and that really threw off my flow there. Guys, gals, and pals, this has been